One problem I have with The Last Jedi is that the framing of shots and scenes almost seems to want more sympathy to be given to Kylo Ren than to Finn. Now obviously, with Ren's repeated acts of attempted homicide and seizure of a dictatorship, we know Rian Johnson doesn't want us to actually sympathize with him by the end of the movie. After all, as his fans love to say, he loves subversion. The problem, of course, is that we already knew we couldn't sympathize with Ren after he killed his father to defend a genocide machine, ordered the massacre of unarmed civilians, and used mental torture on 2 out of 3 of the new trilogy's heroes. So, weirdly, we get this running theme of framing Kylo Ren as a lost child needing guidance rather than a grown man that needs to be either imprisoned or killed. Meanwhile, Finn, a character that we know has already made the right choice to fight for free people, is given several instances of belittling and mocking. In my previous video on The Last Jedi, I addressed the scene where Finn is tased. I could also address the dissonance in his character, as he goes from a somber yet witty former child soldier to a happy-go-lucky tourist once on Canto Bight. However, there's one specific scene I'd like to talk about. Or rather, 2 specific scenes, as how this movie frames Finn and Kylo Ren, in similar situations, shows a prejudice that can lead to dangerous behavior and practices outside of the realm of fiction. Allow me to set the scenes. In The Force Awakens, Finn fights Kylo Ren. He does well, but is ultimately defeated. He is slashed in the shoulder and the spine by Kylo Ren, and falls into the snow unconscious. Rey continues the fight and slashes Ren across the face, leaving him with a gash. The characters all escape, though Finn has to be carried to a medical station, unconscious until the sequel. Kylo Ren seems fine, ultimately jumping in a TIE fighter to try and kill his mom before getting patched up further. Finn, again, has to wake up before doing anything. Let's compare. Finn awakens in a medical bed wearing a bacta-suit. His first instinct is to call out for Rey. As he jolts up, he slams his head against the medical container. He slams against it again. Regaining awareness, he opens up the medical container to find himself alone in a cargo room. He falls out of the bed, spraying medical fluids all over the place. He trudges down the hallway until Poe and BB-8 find him. His injuries are never mentioned, shown, or even referenced again. Kylo, on the other hand, is asked by Snoke how his wound is, to which he responds, "It's nothing." He then takes that ridiculous thing off, complete with a close-up of a sad Kylo Ren face with his sutures framed to draw attention to them. This happens again in the elevator. Then we get a scene of him getting patched up somberly by a medical droid. Then we get a shirtless scene as a final showcase of his other 2 scars. Throughout the film, Kylo's scars are present, and framed as a constant reminder that he went through pain. Finn's injuries are used as a joke once and promptly forgotten. And let's not pretend that these injuries are one-to-one, aside from how they're framed. Remember, Finn received injuries trying to protect Rey, while Kylo received injuries trying to murder Rey. Finn received a deep wound across his spine, which can often be fatal in the real world. Kylo received a gash across his face. Finn's injuries were worse and nobly gained. Kylo's injuries were comparatively tame and well-deserved. Yet the movie uses Finn's pain as a joke, and Kylo's pain as a humanizing factor. That Rey, as well as the director, cinematographer, and a considerable portion of the audience, sees a scar and is willing to find sympathy with the person, no matter what they have done, is pretty reprehensible. Please don't take this to mean that I don't think a facial scar can be life-changing. I've got some scars myself, and it's a lie to say that people won't notice them, or even judge you because of them. However, not only is Kylo Ren's scar not enough to be considerably a change to his appearance, as Rian Johnson specifically modified the location of the scar because, quote, "it looked goofy," end quote. The scar is not the mark of an accident, or from an assault, but rather from a failed assault on his part. Also, I could get into how messed up it is that scars that don't fit Rian Johnson's preferred model are considered goofy. Is a scar that isn't kept to one side of the face not worth showing? Is a person with a scar you don't personally like somehow less able to be taken seriously? But of course this would just be bad writing, plain and simple, if all the characters were genderless non-coded robots. Yet this film doesn't exist in a vacuum. By treating Kylo's minor wounds as a big life-changing deal, and treating Finn's life-threatening wounds as a trivial matter of no more consequence than a joke, The Last Jedi reinforces century-old stereotypes about black people. Specifically, it implies that black people are somehow less affected by pain, have higher pain tolerances, or cannot be physically damaged the way white people can. This is a demonstrated, dangerous trend, where white people actually perceive black people as experiencing less pain than white people under the same situations. Older textbooks, including some used as recently as late 2017, suggest black people overreport the pain that they are experiencing. Doctors have declined to give painkillers to black patients, expressing the same level of discomfort that would grant a white patient the same painkillers. And some surgeons even believe that less anesthesia is needed for operations on black people. This, of course, goes beyond the medical field, where black people are not believed when they speak about suffering and are expected to take more physical abuse than their white counterparts. However, as the injuries are framed in a medical setting in this movie, I wanted to primarily address the medical biases in the real world. This has been referred to as an empathy gap. When two people are hurt, with everything except the skin color being the same, and white people feel worse for the hurt white person, there is a gap in empathy. Now, when the conditions are not the same, and the white person deserves to be hurt, and is hurt much less, and is still empathized with more, and the white man's acts of attempted murder are framed as romance, while the black man's friendship is framed as harassment, this is less of a gap and more of a chasm. Consider as well the implications of Finn's treatment. He's placed alone, in a room filled with cargo, without any monitoring. It's almost like the medical staff doesn't even deem his injury serious enough to receive attention. He's not on the medical ship, which we know they have. He's not even in the Radis's medical bay, which again we know they have. Finn is isolated, left unattended, injures himself, and stumbles out into the hallway without any assistance. All for a joke. Let me say that I don't think that Rian Johnson did this with an intention to reinforce racial stereotypes. He seems to have way too high a view of himself and far too simplistic a view on racism to ever intentionally be what he would consider racist. But racist this framing is. Finn's injury should have been treated with respect and acknowledgement. I doubt Johnson could have done this with class, but a scene with Finn examining his wounds, sorrowed by his inability to help his friends, would have been light years better than a scene where Kylo looks sad getting hurt while trying to kill people. Hopefully, with the return of J.J. Abrams, we might get a more respectful treatment of Finn. I'm not exactly hopeful, but it could happen. What's important for us, though, in the meanwhile, is to try to examine where we might hold biases when writing stories. Are certain characters treated as jokes, while others are treated with dignity? Why might that be? Even if it isn't intended, writers coming from places of privilege, be it race, gender, or otherwise, can regurgitate stereotypes in seemingly insignificant ways to unfortunately significant effects. With prudence and some faithful dedication to proofreading and editing, we can do our best to keep our harmful ideas out of our works.